What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be doing my range gearing priority video. This is going to be kind of my part 3 for the Is Range Worth It series. This comes after the DPS rotation video. Before I really get into this video though, I do kind of want to talk about some stuff because I find it very difficult to make this video. The way that the range gear is currently designed, unless you really want to be using low-level range gear, I don't really see much of a reason in ever getting it. Because I think, necromancy is just a significantly better option. And, once you start getting into the best in slot range gear, each piece costs so much that it just gets very difficult to make a video like this, I think. So we'll kind of see how this goes. Alright guys, so to start this video off, like I alluded to in the intro, it's kind of difficult to make this video because so many pieces of the range gear setup are so expensive that it's pretty hard for me to justify telling anybody to use range to upgrade their gear. You're so much better off just using something like necromancy to, make a bunch of money, or do bosses if you're an Iron Man to earn the range gear, rather than using the range gear to upgrade itself. I really can't suggest doing that for this video. Unlike the melee video where I just did, where it kind of made more sense to be upgrading, and you could kind of justify like using melee to earn the melee gear, range to me doesn't really seem feasible to do that. It's just so expensive, the end game kit is like 11 or 12 bill or whatever. So it's just pretty ridiculous. Also, when I'm doing this video, I don't actually have the normal Dracolich set, and I'm not about to go and buy that for this video, so forgive me for not having that to show in my gear, my worn equipment thing, so definitely forgive me for that, I guess, but not gonna waste that money on this video. So anyway, to start off here, you can see the worn equipment screen. This is a very base level range gear setup that I would probably suggest getting. This is probably a decent starting point if you do want to be using range as like a lower level combat style. Basically, you just want some kind of augmentable armor, and I would probably suggest getting the decimation bow for your weapon. I mean, this bow costs 6 mil. It's super affordable. It's tier 87. It's relatively decent. And it's also a bow, so you can benefit from the effects of all of the different arrow types here, which I would definitely go about picking up all of these different types of arrows. Specifically, the full arrows, definitely go about picking up at least a decent stack of these, and then also a few of the death spore arrows. You definitely don't need 100,000 of these. This was my fletching training method, so I have a pile of them, but definitely be picking up at least full arrows and death spore arrows. Maybe a couple Bic arrows as well, because these are also pretty decent, but you could probably forget about the other ones. Like splintering arrows are actually, let me talk about these. These splintering arrows are pretty decent for like low level training. They're a very affordable arrow. As you can see, they're only 400 GP a piece. They're tier 95. So these are definitely a really good arrow for like lower level training. Once you go out and get the greater dazing shot ability from Shattered Worlds. So maybe pick up a couple of these as well if you want to be using some kind of low-level gear setup like this. But again, I don't really know how much you'd actually use like low-level range gear, because I think there are just better options out there. So let's get straight into this upgrade priority guide. As you can see, I said start out with like a Nox bow, or probably the decimation is a much better alternative. But the first real upgrade you should probably be working towards with range is, unfortunately, going to be the greater ricochet ability. Honestly, you should probably try to get greater dazing shot before this from Shattered Worlds. I mean, it's free, and you probably have to go there for your bladed dive anyway. This ability is actually like not bad because of the way it works with poison. So maybe, go and get this, but then definitely be trying to get your greater ricochet as soon as possible. You might be able to flip-flop this with number 3, which is the greater death swiftness ability, but definitely be trying to get these two greater abilities probably as soon as you possibly can. Specifically, greater ricochet. You could just use a switch for death swiftness if you want with planted feet, but You definitely want to be getting greater ricochet as soon as possible with the Caroming 4 perk, obviously, on your weapon. And this is just so strong for range that it's really hard to justify using range without greater ricochet, which is why I say to get it as soon as possible. And then you can see the next thing, I would probably get greater death swiftness. This is honestly just such a nice quality of life. And I think it's relatively affordable. I'm not exactly sure how much it costs with all the components and stuff, but the codex is like 50 mil. So definitely pretty affordable for that. Unfortunately, greater ricochet isn't. It's pretty expensive. But after you get those two greater abilities, I would probably go out and try to pick up your Dark Bow EOF. This is one of your best endgame EOF weapons. It's very, very strong, and you might as well pick it up early because I feel like this plus greater ricochet adds a lot of damage output potential to your range gear if you are going to be using it with a relatively low tier setup like this. The next thing I would probably try to pick up is a couple of Pernix quivers, at least one of these. These are like 30 mil or even less maybe now. They're definitely very affordable. I'd probably pick one up. You could really only have one and put like death spore arrows and you know, your full arrows in there. You could also get Tyrant Wind quivers. You can see here I use Tyrant Wind quivers for my death spore switch just because I don't really care about the effect when I'm using these. This is a good way to, I guess, save a little bit of money if you care about 30 mil. But yeah, definitely be picking up a Pernix quiver or 2 or 3 because they're pretty nice. The next upgrade is unfortunately going to be a very expensive one, and that is going to be the Bow of the Last Guardian. You could maybe pick up a Saren Godbow before this and start using the Saren Godbow as your main weapon. But personally, I don't really think that's the greatest idea because you have to put the Caroming perk on it and then you have to take the Caroming perk off of it. So, you know, I think you're just better off going with the Bow of the Last Guardian at that point. Again, this is unfortunately a very, very expensive upgrade. What is this thing now? Like 3.2 bill or maybe more. I'm not 100% sure exactly, but it's like 3 bill for this item. So pretty, you know, expensive. But the thing about this is once you get your Bow of the Last Guardian, you can actually start using range and doing some pretty decent damage output with it. It's definitely a very, very strong thing to be getting. And if you have the money to spend on this, it will make your range, like this range gear you see here, without all the other EOFs or anything, is really like at the point where you can probably start outputting like top tier damage. So I would probably suggest trying to get the bow as soon as possible. When you get the Bow of the Last Guardian, definitely switch over to a Grimoire because this will help you out quite a bit with your death spores and then your crit buff. So you probably are going to want to start using a Grim with the Bow of the Last Guardian. After you get the Bow of the Last Guardian, I don't have the physical Saren Godbow, but I would probably go out and try to get your Saren Godbow EOF. This item is ridiculously strong. The Saren Godbow EOF is the single strongest ability in the entire game against targets where it can hit all of its hits. So definitely be going out, getting your Saren Godbow, and then just chucking it in an EOF straight away. This item, again, is ridiculously strong. So this paired with the Bow of the Last Guardian, if you don't know why you have to put this in an EOF, you don't want to be taking off the Bow of the Last Guardian because you want to be always benefiting from the Bow of the Last Guardian's passive effect, especially when you're under the special attack. The Saren Godbow will proc one guaranteed proc from the bow and then give you an additional stack. So it'll give you just massive, massive damage output with the bow. So definitely go out and try to pick this up. The next thing is going to be normal Dracolich armor. Again, like I said, I didn't go out and buy that for this video. So just pretend this is the normal Dracolich armor. When you're doing this, the best way to go about getting your Dracolich armor maybe to be getting the boots, or I mean the boots and the helmet, and then like a leg, and then maybe upgrading to the hauberk last, just to be, you know, I guess getting the benefits of the 3-piece set effect as soon as possible, and then the 4-piece set effect as soon as possible. And then you probably want to pick up the gloves last, because you're probably going to be fighting a lot of poisonable bosses. So then pick up the gloves last. And again, remember, this is the normal Dracolich that I'm talking about, not you don't have to go out and get elite right away. The next thing that I would probably get, this is kind of optional. You know, it's a very good item, but I feel like a lot of people maybe won't use this because they don't like to not get any sort of healing, but it's definitely worth picking up an Eldritch Crossbow EOF. The Eldritch Crossbow EOF really brings range to that next level of damage output if you can benefit, or if you can, you know, pull off the Prayer Flicks perfectly. This paired with like a Saren Godbow adds an additional, like, what is it, like 10,000 or 12,000 damage to your Saren Godbow special attack. It adds just a ridiculous amount of damage to like your rapid fires and greater ricochets. This item, or this special attack, is ridiculously strong. And the reason you have to put this in an EOF is because if you use the actual Eldritch Crossbow as a physical item, as soon as you switch off the Eldritch Crossbow back to your Bow of the Last Guardian, the special attack will wear off. So unfortunately, you do have to put the Eldritch Crossbow into an EOF. I honestly kind of wish they would change this. It might be better for most people if they changed that, but you know, it doesn't really matter if you're spending the money on all this other stuff. What's an extra 280 mil, you know what I mean? Who cares? But definitely be picking up your Eldritch EOF if you can, because it is insanely, insanely strong. What I would probably do after that is then start upgrading your Dracolich to Elite Dracolich. Much like before, upgrade your boots first, then probably the gloves if you don't do poisonable bosses, otherwise the helmet, and then the legs, and then probably the hauberk last. The hauberk is the most expensive piece to upgrade. So yeah, you probably are going to want to upgrade this last. So one little note here coming in after the fact, when you are upgrading your Dracolich to Elite Dracolich, the best way to do this is use a Vorkath scale for your hauberk, and then for the rest of the pieces of gear, you want to be using the ancient scales from Siru. If we look at the numbers here, you can see it takes significantly more scales to be upgrading the hauberk than it does even the legs. And the way that the math works out is the Vorkath scale generally is worth about the same price as 420 of these ancient scales. And as you can see, if you're using the Vorkath scale, unless you're like an Iron Man or something like that, you're going to be losing out on quite a bit of money if you waste, you know, that 140 or whatever ancient scales of worth of the Vorkath scale. So yeah, definitely be coming over here to the GE and picking up a Vorkath scale, and then you're going to need 560 of the ancient scales to be upgrading your other pieces of gear. So let's look at this. What does 560 of these cost? So as you can see, 560 is going to be 700 mil worth of ancient scales, where a Vorkath scale, I'm not entirely sure on the price right now because the G hasn't caught up, but it's probably somewhere around like 400 mil. We go 420 of these. We can assume the Vorkath scale is probably about like 530 mil. So yeah, definitely be doing that to upgrade your Dracolich, and don't be, you know, using Vorkath scales at a, you know, lower rate than you should. As you can see, the set effect for Elite Dracolich is pretty ridiculous when you have your 5-piece effect. It makes your rapid fire generate extra adrenaline. It gives you the Dracolich infusion for 3 seconds when you have the 3-piece set, which increases your critical strike chance by 40%, which is ridiculous. And then that extends by a further 1.8 seconds for each additional piece of gear on top of that. So you'll be able to get a total of like 4 abilities with the 40% critical strike chance, which, as you can imagine, if you have a crit buff active and you have a 40% crit chance, plus all the other crit chances you have with like biting and the grim and stuff, you have like a almost 60% critical strike chance, probably actually higher than 60%. You have just a ridiculously high crit chance. Your greater ricochet will generate massive amounts of adrenaline. Your dark bows are going to start hitting just absurdly high. So the Elite Dracolich set is truly insane. when you have the 5-piece set on. Even with the 4-piece set, it's pretty powerful. And then the final piece of gear I would probably pick up is the Stalker's Ring. If you get this, definitely pick it up with the enchantment, because there's no point in using this item if you don't have the enchantment, unless accuracy is really coming into play. So yeah, definitely pick this up with the enchantment as your last thing. This makes a pretty small difference, all things considered. But as you can see, it does give you a pretty high critical strike chance. It gives you a 4% crit chance plus an additional 3% critical strike damage when you're wearing a bow. So this is definitely a pretty solid upgrade. Once you get all of the other stuff, I would definitely try to get all this expensive stuff before you get this minor upgrade here. But that's kind of the process I would use to be getting from, you know, a very base level range kit that you're probably not really going to be using, to be honest. Let's be real, no one's going to be using that, to the end game kit. And again, unfortunately, with the way that range kind of works, it's just very difficult for me to make this video because all of these pieces of gear are super expensive. I mean, Greater Ricochet is like 1 billion coins. The EOFs are all like 300 mil each, and you need 3 of them, maybe even 4 of them, because you could be putting your Decimation Bow into an EOF as well for a big boy AoE EOF if you do use AoE damage at some places. So you could have up to 4 EOFs, and then you have to go and put, you know, multiple 1 bill plus weapons into EOFs with the Eldritch Crossbow and the Saren Godbow here. So it's just very expensive to be getting this gear and upgrading this gear. And again, this is how I would do it in a perfect world. And like I said, you're probably much better off just going out, using Necromancy, getting a bunch of money from like Riesel the Weasel or something like that. Maybe even getting a melee gear setup and pumping out a bunch of super easy, like 5.5 minute kills at Zamorak 500% or something like that, to then be earning your money for best in slot range gear. It's just very difficult to be getting this gear until you get the Bow of the Last Guardian, at least, if you're using a range kit that's self-contained to only range. So yeah, hopefully, I guess this video help some people kind of figure out how to be upgrading their gear, maybe most optimally, and without maybe, you know, spending money you don't need to spend, because if you're spending 11 bill on gear, you probably don't want to be wasting money on random stuff. There are other things that you can get for range, obviously. The Zuk Cape is decent for range. It's definitely not one of the best items to be getting, but it's pretty decent. You can also be getting the Nightmare Gauntlets, but those aren't very good, to be honest. I think those are kind of bad. But yeah, that's kind of how I would go about upgrading my range gear. Realistically, I don't know how useful this video is, but hopefully it helps somebody out there get their best in slot range kit and start pumping out some damage. Thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope this video is actually kind of useful for some people. Again, it's just one of those things where the entire concept of the video just kind of gets thrown out the window because of just how ridiculously hard it is to get the range gear. Even for Iron Men, I don't know how useful this is, because what are you gonna pump out a bunch of Zamorak kills or something with range? So yeah, hopefully this video helps some people though. And if you liked the video, definitely drop a like on it. And before we get out of here, can we talk about how rare the Zygosine Sworn, or the Zygomite Sworn thing is? I've tried to get this for like a year and it hasn't happened. So what the heck is this? But yeah, anyway guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.